Hello students. This is just a quick video to give you a little reminder about how to add integers when they have the same sign and when they have different signs. When we talk about signs, we're referring to the fact of whether or not they are a positive integer or a negative integer, greater than 0 or less than 0. So in this particular example, we have two integers, -8 and -4, and we're adding them together. I want to know what is my total going to be. In class, we talked about this in a few different ways. The first way we talked about was using this number line. We found a 0 point, and then we counted out and labeled the different points on the number line using the numbers that were given. So in this case, we started with a -8. We know that -8 means less than 0, 8 places. So I go back 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. This would bring me to -8. Then I'm going to add, and normally when I add, numbers get bigger, so I go the opposite direction. However, I'm adding a -4, which turns me back around to go the other way. 1, 2, 3, 4. And I'm sorry I went off the screen. So then I'd have to figure out, well, what number would this be at? If I'm at a -8, then the next would have been -9, -10, -11, -12. So -8 where I was, plus -4, adding 4 more in the negative direction, brings me to a -12. Now, it's not always going to be reasonable to create a number line for every single problem you create. So some of you might want to think about this like a thermometer. And a thermometer that was in the below 0 category of 8 degrees, and then it dropped 4 more degrees. And so maybe you think about the temperature dropping. Another example that I gave in class happened to be the game of tug of war. And for our game of tug of war, it wasn't about who was stronger or anything like that. Our game of tug of war dealt with how many players they had on each side. So for this particular example, we would start with this again, this integer, the -8, and there would be -8 or 8 people on the negative team. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Then I would look at my next integer that I'm adding to that, and in this case, it would be 4 negatives. 1, 2, 3, 4. When I look at the two numbers, or the two columns, and I compare it, I try to say, all right, who has more players, the negative team or the positive team? Well, that seems like a silly question in this example because there are no players on the positive team. They're all on the negative team. And how many are there? Well, 3 times 4 is 12. There are 12 players on the negative team. Some of you might be thinking, hey, that's the same answer as the first time. Well, of course it is. It's the same problem. We just solved it in a different way. Others of you may be using some other kind of shortcut where you say, you know what? Since the signs are the same, I just add these two numbers, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12, and then take the sign since they have the same sign. And again, you get the same answer. I bet you didn't realize in first and second grade, even kindergarten, that when you were taking 5 plus 4 that you were working with integers. And the same rules would apply here. If I used my tug of war example and I had a positive and a negative, I would put 5 positives on this side, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then my next integer is a +4, so I'm going to add 4 more positives. And, oh, there are no negatives in this example, so the answer would just be a +9. Interesting to see it in a different way, and that's exactly what you were doing in elementary school. We're going to skip down to this problem.
To the building need to report to the Media Center new teachers meeting at this time. If you're a new teacher in the building, please go to the Media Center for the new teacher meeting right now.
I apologize for that announcement. I also have here another example of positives and negatives. Well, for those of you watching this video, obviously you are, that's a silly comment. I'm not going to draw 32 negative signs, minus signs, and I'm not going to draw 52 negative signs. So let's just pretend what was going to happen. They're all going to go on this side. So all of these negative signs would be over here. Well, how many would that be? Well, to figure that out, I'll take 32 plus 52. That'll give me a total of 84. Well, 84 what? 84 negatives. I took the two numbers, added them together, and took the negative sign that went with it. So, just a quick example. Go ahead, hit pause, try to solve this, and come back for the answer. Hopefully you found the answer to be -9. On this example, go ahead and hit pause to figure out the answer. The answer is -11. All right, now in this example, we have something a little bit different. We're still adding integers like before, but now the signs are different. So let's look at our number line example again. In our number line example, we would start at 0. We'll make this 0. And we have to go 4. Well, what kind of a 4? +4. So I'm going +4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now I want to add. Again, adding makes me think to go this way. However, it's a -6. So instead of going that way, I'm going to come back. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So where do I end up here? If this was 0, this is -1, and that's -2. So my answer would be -2. This is also something that I can do with the tug-of-war idea. So if I make my little tug-of-war chart, here it says I have 4 positives. 1, 2, 3, 4. It says that I have 6 negatives. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Again, I'm not looking at how strong the team members are. I'm just looking to see who has the most team members. And when I look here, the negatives have more team members. There are 6 compared to the 4. So the negative team is winning by 2. Again, the same answer as that. In class, we had a little talk and discussion about, well, how do I get this answer if my numbers were really big? And what a lot of the kids said is, you know, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to subtract these two numbers. 8 minus 3 is 5. And then I'm going to take the sign for the one that is bigger. And that's what they said, but what they really meant was for the one that had the highest absolute value. So the absolute value of 8 is 8, and the absolute value of 3 is 3. So which one is bigger? Well, the 8 is. And what sign went with the 8? A positive. So positive, what goes here? And what the kids said what they meant when they said, I just take the one that's bigger, they were already taking the absolute value. They were just looking at the 3 and the 8, not the negative sign in it. So let's try another example. We'll get some numbers here that are a little bit larger. Let's look at -17 plus 8. If I take the tug-of-war example, I would have 17 negative signs over here and 8 positive signs over here. So where am I going to have more signs? Well, I'm going to have more signs in the negative. Well, how many more? Well, that how many more is a phrase that usually indicates subtraction. So I'm just going to take 17 minus 8 and find an answer of 9. I already know my sign was negative, so -9. I could do the process that we did before, which is essentially what I did, of just subtracting these, 17 minus 8, and then take the absolute value of those numbers that remain to see what sign to use. So if I took the absolute value of -17, I'd have 17, and the absolute value of 8 is 8. Well, this has a bigger absolute value, so I take its sign. So just two ways to look at that. All right, I'll do one more together with you. Here I go, I'm looking at these. What has the higher absolute value? The absolute value of -6 is 6. The absolute value of 28 is 28. So the higher absolute value is 28, so I know my answer is going to be positive. And from here, I just subtract. 28 minus 6 is 22. Other than that, I could do my positive-negative tug-of-war. I could look at this and say, well, I'm going to have 6 negatives, and that's easy enough to draw. I'm not really going to draw 28 positives out here. And then who's going to have more? Well, the positive team will. By how many? And again, you would subtract. All right, let's try a few practice problems. Again, hit pause, and when you're ready to answer, unpause it. Hopefully you found the answer to be -2. Right, go ahead and hit pause and think about it. And hopefully you came back with an answer of 4. Try one more here. Hit pause. And hopefully when you came back, you found an answer to be 2. Oh, looks like we have another one. When I have 3 in a row, just start with 2. When I start with these two and I apply my process, I know my sign's going to be negative because the absolute value of this would be higher. And 5 minus 2 is 3. And some of you probably right away said 0 is the answer. But be careful. Make sure you slow down and write your work. Because here what it's saying is I have 3 negatives and I'm adding 3 more negatives to that. Well, 3 negatives and 3 negatives all on the same team is a total of 6 negatives. I'll give you one to try. Go ahead and hit pause. And hopefully you came back with a total of -5. That pretty much wraps up what we learned in class today. Hopefully a few extra examples and the ability to pause and learn by yourself, able to help you understand a little bit more. Really what we learned that when I have the same signs, I'm just going to add the numbers together and keep the sign. And when they're different signs, I'm going to subtract the numbers and this is where it gets pretty wordy. Subtract the numbers and take the sign, positive or negative sign is what we mean, take the sign of the integer with the greatest, I'm running out of room, greatest absolute value. Whoops, sorry about that. V-A-L-U-E. All right, again, I hope that this helped you out, and make sure you refer to the homework calendar to see what your assignment should be.